Well, thought Michigan was probably going to be pretty good on the lines against Nebraska. I don't know if I expected that. Let's talk about it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who check out the show every single day. Thank you for making us your first listen. Plan is obviously just to recap the Michigan-Nebraska game. We will just go methodically through it segment by segment, offense, defense, and then kind of where Michigan goes from here. It's kind of the typical Monday, so that's the plan. I was obviously on the ground. Big shout out to just so many people. Steve Dace for letting me stay with him on the way back home. His church is incredible. Really enjoyed going there. Danny Cannell and Josh Pate, as well as Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. But we'll have some of those guys on here on the show sometime in the relative near future. But man, that was such a incredible beatdown without a score that reflected it. Kind of odd that the score didn't reflect it, right? But that showed a lot of the self-inflicted wounds. My new thing in games this year, even though the movie's 4 years old, I think 2021, I think it was Top Gun Maverick. There's a point in 3 of the 4 games where it's the Glenn Powell scene from where it's the big scene in the bar in Jennifer Connelly's bar. This isn't a spoiler if you haven't seen it. I mean, I've given you 4 years here, but there's just the part where they throw out Tom Cruise at the bar and Glenn Powell says, "Thanks for the beers. Come back anytime." To me, that part in the game happened basically when Michigan went up 10-0. I mean, it was pretty evident, even with Nebraska doing what it did in the opening drive. It's like they do not feel confident. They do not feel comfortable. Didn't feel like the scripted drive type of thing where it's like, okay, it didn't remind me of, like, say, Ohio State 2021 first drive, right? Like those types of things where it's like you test the meat of the defense, you see how you do, you got another, you got a counter play off of that, and then you have another play. Maybe you have one like kind of trick play. For Michigan, a trick play in 2021 was just an end around, right? Like it wasn't really a trick play, it was part of their offense. You just had like little things like that. Nebraska felt like they threw the kitchen sink at Michigan in the first drive and then ended up empty. With that, my reaction to it was, I guess we're not doing offense defense. I think we're just talking about the game. My reaction to it initially, though, was, all right, Michigan withstood everything that Nebraska could throw at them. And yeah, Michigan went 3 and out pretty quickly. I think it was 3 and out. Maybe it was like a 4 and out, something like that. They didn't really do much. And then Nebraska got the ball back. And then we saw the true Nebraska that could do pretty much nothing. And I really just felt like from the jump, Michigan had the game. Right. It didn't take the driving the field and getting the field goal to go up 3-0. It didn't take the Bryce Underwood touchdown. Didn't take the Justice Haynes touchdown or any subsequent score. Right. You had two more field goals in the Jordan Marshall touchdown, or there was the rest of the scoring. It just felt like Michigan had it. It just felt like Michigan was doing everything it could to let Nebraska hang in the game. But at the same time, like, there was never a part of me that felt like, man, I can't believe Michigan's going to lose this game. Not even with like the halftime of it all. It was humorous being in the photo room. I didn't see the Hail Mary because I tend to go back to a photo room before halftime. Usually when there's like 30 seconds left or whatever. So I felt like what Michigan seemed to have felt was that they were going to punt. I mean, it was a colossal error of time management and coaching and all of that stuff. But like in the end, they won the game. And I think you just look back and say, dodged a bullet there. But like being in the photo room with all of the celebrating Nebraska photographers, this isn't like a slam on them, right? They were celebrating as if like kind of in the same way that like maybe Michigan photographers, not Michigan photographers isn't a good, like there aren't a lot of Michigan fanboys in the photo room, but maybe like some Michigan people were, and I was in the press box in 2021. So for the Ohio State game, there was not like a celebration or any sort of like when Michigan beat Ohio State. It was just a professional sounding press box. But like you maybe like the inner monologue of these Nebraska people came out. And I heard there was the same up in the press box where it was kind of like we did it, mission accomplished banner type of thing. We're going to go to the Rose Bowl type of attitude. And, some of my compatriots, Alejandro, Patrick Marin, like we just kind of chuckled at it because it's like, man, you guys really have never been here before, have you? I mean, they have, but it's not a long time. But kind of an incredible thing. I mean, I say this, though, while also noting Nebraska is an incredible place. There's incredible atmosphere. It's my third time going there. I absolutely love going to Lincoln. Maybe I'll stop doing the long drive, but I enjoy it going there. I hate it coming back. It's just a really cool place. And it's impressive that Bryce was able to handle it. Now, did he set the world on fire with his passing? No, he didn't. But no one has against Nebraska to this point. His receivers didn't help him out. I thought the play calling was interesting. I thought it had its moments. I thought it really caught fire there in that final drive, the 8-minute drive. I thought that was where finally you felt like this was Michigan of old, right? They just ran the ball with impunity. And it was really impressive. It was also impressive to see Bryce handle, seeing what he was looking at. Because there was this one play, I think it was maybe on that final drive, when Bryce Bryce did a simulated snap and then looked at the defense and then audibled. Now, hard to really tell because of the helmet communication, what was happening there. But nonetheless, he audibled, whatever. And in that, during that moment, the safety who was simulating pressure backed out. So he sees that and then checks into a run, and it ends up being a first down run from Justice Haynes. That's impressive to see your young guy do that. What's not impressive is seeing the receivers still struggling with drops. I don't really care. I know a lot of people, talk about velocity on his short throws and everything. Maybe, you do need to figure out a way to take some zip off it. Like, it just seems like a normal person would sit there and say, like, okay, maybe I don't, like, just fire it in there. Like, my arm is a howitzer. Let's treat it as such. And that's kind of odd that he's still zipping them in there. I don't have as much of a problem with that when it hits guys in the hands. They just still got to come up with it. And there's PFF had 3 drops, 2 by Samaj, 1 by Channing Goodwin. I feel like Goodwin had probably at least 1 more, if not more. The Mr. Reliable moniker, he needs to become reliable being known for catching the ball rather than the opposite, right? Ronnie Bell was Mr. Reliable. You knew anything thrown in Ronnie Bell's vicinity was getting caught. Didn't matter how hard the throw was. Didn't matter if it was from Joe Milton. He was coming down with it. And right now, it's like the receiving core is the thing that's holding Michigan back from really doing what it is capable of doing. And that's really disappointing. But all in all, I mean, really good win. Let's get into a little bit more minutia here, and we'll do that here in just a moment. But before we do, quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be the game. These aren't just hats of the same vintage styles fans wore in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code LOCKEDON, you'll get your vintage hat for $16.99. Let me tell you, they're high quality. I love mine. I absolutely love mine. We'll wear it on the show more than we have been. But nonetheless, thegamecaps.com. Thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount because the legends wear the game. Let's talk a little defense. Interesting, like, seeing some of the Nebraska reactions, and they're posting, the Bryce Underwood versus Dylan Raiola of it all. Dylan obviously had the 50-ish yard touchdown on the Hail Mary. That still would keep him. If you took that out, which you can't, it'd still be 250 yards passing. But a lot of it was in desperation. There were very few that felt easy. 7 sacks for Michigan easily could have been more like double digits. If it wasn't for the, again, lack of holding calls. As Sharon Moore said today, tackling. He said you can just say it as it is. They're tackling our guys. That was true. And even on the first touchdown that Nebraska had, there was a glaring hold that didn't get called. Jaishawn Barham was approaching Dylan Raiola, and he got held, and that's why Dylan was able to get the pass off. So, that's a game-changing thing, and I wish that they would call it more, right? As Steve put it in the post-game when I was talking to him, he's like, you're telling me. Actually, Chris Ballas said the same thing. Dude, like almost verbatim in the post-game press conference. It's like, so you're telling me that Michigan had 7 sacks, and otherwise Nebraska blocked perfectly every time. No, they're not. I mean, obviously. It's pretty egregious. There was a moment where TJ Guy got not just hands to the face, it was like a elbow to the neck and the face, and it was a mixture of a hold, a hands to the face. I mean, like, it was egregious, and it looked painful. And that's how Dylan Raiola stayed clean on that particular play. But I mean, if you're going to talk edge rushers, I mean, Jaishawn Barham. Listen, I do still think that the intel is correct. Why? Because I've heard it directly from the people who made these decisions that the plan was not to move Jaishawn to edge full time. That was never the plan. I know it was brought up by other people in the offseason as that was what was happening. But you could even see in the first 2 games when he had a couple snaps lining up at edge, but mostly still being at linebacker, that was still the plan. But with everything that's happened, I mean, I think you just run with it now. And I think he's your full-time starter at edge. I mean, he's just been unbelievable. He's unblockable. He very much, remember I said, when you get to like weeks 4 and 5 is when you can finally start to talk about who those guys are. Sometimes it's because the guy comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it's because there's just been a slow build. I mean, it's kind of a fast build when you're only talking 4 games. Right. But, there's just so much to what Jaishawn Barham is able to do. And now finally, like I would imagine with the week that was, I'm probably not going to get any questions for tomorrow's mailbag saying like, are you a little disappointed in the defensive front? There's a reason why I wasn't. And we saw exactly why. Right. Because even though Nebraska used a lot of quick game, just by virtue of the fact that they didn't really go tempo, they didn't do quick game in the same way that, like, say, New Mexico did, where it was 1-2, get rid of the ball. I mean, half the time it wasn't even that quick, or that slow, rather. It was way faster than that. I mean, that kind of tells you what they were capable of, or how they were rendering Michigan useless in a lot of ways, I guess is the best way I can say it. And I think that it was awesome to see just the guys getting in the backfield being that dominant. But likewise, on the other side of the ball, looking at the offense, seeing the offensive line dominate that way and seeing pretty much everybody just have a good game. Right? Like there were a couple moments, very few and far between. There was one, like, because I love Jake Guanera so far. I love him so far. I think he's been phenomenal. And, there were, I think, 2 plays that I recalled in the immediate aftermath. I couldn't recall them right now, where I felt like, all right, he whiffed. That sucks, but whatever. I thought Evan Link was good. I know people are blaming him for the one block that could have been a touchdown. I actually blame Bryce on that one. Bryce either should have cut it up earlier or he should have cut it up later, and he did neither. Either run to the pylon where he would have gone in untouched, or cut it up about 1 second earlier when there was a gaping hole. Instead, he ran into the block. Was it a great block by Evan Link? No. But that was on Bryce to me. Which, again, he's going to have some of those moments, right? I'm sure that they corrected him and when he's watching film, right? Like that's a correctable moment. But like Link continues to be good. Sprague continues to be good. Afobe had his best game. Crippen had his best game. And Guarnera had a couple misses, but other than that, I mean, it was a dominant performance. Justice Haynes, we cannot say enough about this dude. There's a reason why I have been going nuts over him even before he committed to Michigan. Like, don't listen to anyone who tells you that he was not RB1 material before this, right? Because, like, I mean, he is absolutely insane. Now, if he's able to add a little to his game, which can happen in season, we've seen it before. In 2021, I feel like both Blake and Hassan got better as the season went on. Hassan in particular, he was already that fall forward guy, but it wasn't this time of the year when, no one was really talking about Hassan this time of the year in 2021. Everyone was talking about Blake because Blake was doing the Justice Haynes thing, basically what we're seeing now. But Haynes is doing it even better than Blake was, where it was just like you knew at some point in the game he was going to break a long one. And you're starting to see that again. So can he find a way to be even more elusive in traffic like Blake became? I don't know if he's trying to add that to his game or not. But he's just unbelievable with his speed, his physicality, and great to see Jordan Marshall get that too, for him to be able to get that long touchdown as well. And it's just interesting to see Michigan adding that outside zone to their game when, they were still using some power and everything. And I feel like generally they've run power better this year than they did last year. I don't think it's close. But I think that you're starting to see some of these elements coming together. And the run game being as dominant as it's been for 2 straight weeks and Bryce running the football helps that. That's one thing where I wish that we would still see more of. And Michigan finally did it in the final drive out of necessity, recognizing we do not want to put the ball in the air. Once they got past like they're back out of the end zone area, right? They started the drive on the 20 or the 25. Once they got out of that area, then they started running the ball with impunity. I know Nebraska's defensive line, that was the reason. The Nebraska defensive line was the reason I picked Michigan to win the game, right? But I didn't think it was going to be that much of a domination by the Michigan offensive line, who is starting to come together. What did we say last week? It takes about 4 weeks before the offensive line comes together generally. Now, it's different when it's a mostly set good offensive line going in like 22. Heck, I mean, even in 2021, it wasn't a good offensive line in 2020. But those guys were all familiar with each other, essentially. They were able to all just kind of like up their game, right? Like those are guys that played together for the most part in 2020. So just to be able to have that continuation then in the next year by adding, a guy who was already in the room at left tackle, adding a center via the portal, same deal the next year. I think that helped some continuity where maybe it didn't take some time like it did in 2018. But generally it takes about 4 weeks. And it's interesting that this came against Nebraska because that was the same moment in 2018 where it was like the offensive line found something. Now they got to continue it. And I'm weirdly still reticent because I again, the receiving core scares me a bit. But otherwise, like I'm feeling pretty good about a lot of things. Let's continue on. Let's get into the more things in the defense that I want to talk about. And then we're going to close it out. So we will do that here in just a moment. But before we do, the NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff tonight. Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you'd like to bet. Player props, building a same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye out on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays, apparently. Sometimes maybe Wednesdays. I don't know. The NFL's all the time. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Listen, Argus Farm Shop is in the neighborhood. They got a couple different places there in Ann Arbor. It comes alive all week long, but especially Saturdays and Sundays during football season. Everyone's in team colors. The energy is incredible, and it feels like everyone is there cheering together in unison as they are getting their goods. It's the kind of place where you walk in, everyone knows your name. The staff are like family, and they've been serving Ann Arbor for years. So that is the important thing. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go and support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. There are so many other names that I want to make sure we mention here. Like we've talked about the offensive line, the two running backs, obviously Bryce Underwood. I don't think he played as bad as his PFF grade. I don't think he played bad at all. I thought he played very well, actually. If you have eyes that can see, you'll see that. But you look on the other side of the ball. I mean, Ernest Hausmann had an incredible homecoming. Remember, he's from Columbus, Nebraska. He started his career at Nebraska. This is for me to say to the person who didn't understand the sarcasm of Thursday's show. Who was like, you idiot. He started his career at Nebraska, after I joked with Connor, like, oh, if only Michigan had the guy, or Nebraska had a guy like number 15. He's Nebraska native. Didn't get the sarcasm. Because, yeah, I might know that Ernest Hausmann started his career at Nebraska. Maybe just a little bit. But I mean, he just had an incredible, you could see the emotion on his face all game. Incredible. He should be talked about more nationally for how good he is. Jayden Sanders. There was the point late in the game when Shamari Earls was in. Obviously, he had the PI. But there was that point when Shamari Earls was in. The guy everyone, like, remember, like, all of our preseason depth charts, everything they talked about, even in press conferences, it was, man, it's really Zeke and Jair, and then maybe JoJo Edmond. I don't know if I can't even remember the injury report. I don't know if he's injured. I haven't seen him at all the last few weeks. Like, maybe JoJo Edmond, but then definitely Shamari Earls. And I found myself, before even that play, being like, man, they got to get Jayden Sanders or Elijah Dotson out there. Because both of them have been very good. But Jayden Sanders in particular. Now, I haven't posted to my personal TikTok in a long time, but the last post I have was me raving about Michigan getting a commitment from Jayden Sanders, and that looks pretty prescient right now. I'm still getting likes on it. Like, I haven't logged into TikTok in forever. But I'm still getting, like, the notifications, like, this many people liked your video. And it's all the Jayden Sanders video. And, I mean, he's really showing it. It's amazing that was his fourth game, as just like Bryce. But, like, he handled his duties as a guy who is in hostile territory against a really good quarterback and a really, really good receiving core. He did a really good job. He's been very, very impressive, and it's a far cry from where he was against Oklahoma. Elijah Dotson's also doing very well. I mean, really, if I was to go top to bottom defense, I mean, it all looked very, very good. Even when, like, they had their moments, right? Like, and you're going to get got by good quarterbacks with good receivers. That's just going to happen. But generally speaking, I mean, they held him to like 30 or 40 yards rushing. I don't remember offhand the number. And yeah, 300 yards passing, but like, you had a desperation heave. You had a couple other spots where I would say it was kind of lucky. And then otherwise, like, Michigan just kind of forced them to move down the field, like, methodically, which was more reminiscent of 2021 Mike McDonald. I think that this defense, it's not necessarily trending to being a top 10 defense right now. I mean, I'm sure it will get there by the season's end, but like it's got the same goods as that 2021 defense does. Maybe not with Aiden Hutchinson, but like I would be interested to see what you're going to see from some of these other guys. Cole Sullivan's another name I didn't mention. I mean, he had the pick. The current interception leader for Michigan. It's kind of rare you see that for a linebacker. Shout out to Jair Hill for tipping that ball to him. But also shot out of a cannon so many times. The one thing that obviously is concerning on that side is the immaturity of Brandon Hillman and Jair Hill, which is what we've been alluding to for all offseason since the spring game. There's a reason for that. You know, Brandon Hillman, though he played his heart out and looked excellent for the majority of the game, he could have cost Michigan dearly, right? He gave Nebraska that opportunity, right? Michigan was about to get the ball back. They were starting to run with impunity at that point. It was already a 2-score game. It was about to probably be a 3-score game if it wasn't for that. You just got to be better than that. And you're used to Michigan being better than that. So, Sherrill Moore says he's kind of addressed those things. Hopefully it takes to it, because I think he has a point where he says like you don't want to like correct to the point where they aren't playing with that emotion. You just don't want them to be emotional, and that's a challenge, I think. And I mean they got to tone it down a little bit, right? And let your play on the field do the talking. You don't have to have all these extra things that happen after. So there's that. But I know there were a lot of people that were upset by it being only a 3-point win. Listen, you don't get anywhere with style points. And Michigan generally hasn't either. It could have and should have been a 3 to 4 score win against Nebraska. Game didn't go that way. Michigan still wiped the floor with them. Nebraska was lucky to be in that situation where it was a close game, whether it was tied at half or even a 3-point difference at the end. And yeah, you got to play with a little bit more killer instinct than Michigan did, which means eliminating the mistakes on the field and the extracurriculars after. But I came away very encouraged because old Michigan would have lost that game. When I say old Michigan, I mean pre-2021. So you still have remnants of what you would expect Michigan to be, able to go out there and do what you expect Michigan to do. So I think it's absolutely incredible. All right. Plan this week is we're probably going to be guest heavy we're going to have our mailbag tomorrow. We are going to have our usual Jack Tuttle and Connor Stallions. And then I think the plan is to probably get a guest, maybe an added guest with Connor Stallions, and maybe a different guest on Friday. We'll see how that shakes out. We'll figure that out. But anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.